guys. Happy Monday. I am roasting a chicken right now, and I was planning to make couscous with it, but I kind of, as Bono would say, I got stuck in a moment, and I thought, what I really want is stuffing with my chicken. So we are gonna make like a very old-fashioned stuffing recipe, which when I say old-fashioned, I mean this is the 17th century version, which I have tweaked a little bit to be more like what we would do now a little bit. But there are a couple of sort of odd things that that I'm not going to do, and a couple odd things that I am going to do that are sort of more in the Jacobean vein. First of all, so I'm going to tell you, it's very rich. You don't need a lot of it, but I'm going to make it in this ramekin, and that's going to be enough for tonight, and then for leftovers, and that kind of thing. So we're just going to start. I'm going to start. I have a stick of butter in here, okay? And that's one of the things that is a little bit of a difference. The recipe that I had from the 17th century, which is in this crumbling cookbook, which is not 17th century, it's from like the 1950s, but they did, it's the Marion Brown's Southern Cookbook. And they went around and got recipes, sort of like almost like a folk project, got recipes from people, from like their grandmother's stuff. And it's kind of unbelievable. There's a new version, but it doesn't have as much stuff in it as the old version, so I keep that crumbling thing just in case. This is in the newer version, this stuffing. It's called the pecan stuffing, okay? So while that butter's melting, I have one onion. And I'm not making the full recipe too, because this is for stuffing a 20-pound turkey, okay? So this is a good rich stuffing that you can stuff the turkey with. It's a good, like, kind of moist stuffing, okay? And I probably should have cut this up before we got on camera, but, we gotta wait for that butter to melt anyway. We'll talk about some other things. Another thing that is a little unusual is that I've toasted the bread. And, I'm kind of a weirdo. We all know this. We all know I'm a hoarder or whatever. I keep the heels for my bread in the freezer. And I noticed the reason I'm making this, part of it is that I started thinking about it when I made chicken stock the other day. And I was like, oh, there are all my bread heels. I need to make stuffing. And, I keep it in there, and I kind of pull out a couple slices here and there, like if I'm going to stuff a fish, or if I want breadcrumbs for a meatloaf or something. It's, it's pretty handy. And, a lot of us don't use the heels for anything anyway, except for maybe sometimes French toast or something. Anyway, so I'm going to chop up this onion pretty fine, like in pieces like that. Okay, so you just kind of do whatever your method is. I don't do it right. We're not going to look at my bad knife skills, but, so I'm going to get this onion really good and chopped up, and put that in the butter. I'm going to start that off. Okay, so there we go, our onion. That's going in that stick of butter, which is mostly melted at this point. And then to that, I'm going to add like a teaspoon of salt. And remember why we put the salt on the onions? Because it's like putting salt on a slug, it helps the water come across the concentration gradient, and then it exudes its liquid. Oh, I need a pusher. There we go. There we go. So I'm gonna kind of push that around a little bit, and those things will start to break down. The other thing I'm gonna put in there with those is some mushrooms. I have 8 button mushrooms, and I'm gonna chop them up a little finer than I normally would. And this is the kind of thing too, if I were kind of thinking in advance, or like, if we didn't have things to chop up, I would probably put these through the food processor. And I probably should have, but sort of a good, just kind of chopped up. Not super fine like for a duxelle, but like, finer than normal. Slice them and then slice them again is a good, good rule of thumb. So, yeah, and I don't, sometimes you can make, I make the traditional American stuffing where you kind of cube the fresh bread, and it's nice, and it's, it's different. It's a different thing, but this one's kind of a good winter stuffing. It's good with game. It's kind of, you know, it has a lot of more rich elements to it. And one of those elements, which we're going to chop up in a second, is I'm going to take the liver from the chicken, okay? And you know, I used to, and I still do sometimes, I used to save the livers from my chickens and put them in the freezer, like in a bag together. When I had enough, I'd make a pate or something. But you know, quite frankly, chicken livers are so cheap, and that I usually just kind of, now I'll just buy a tub if I want to do that. And I use the liver when I have it. Either like I saute it and I eat it, or I'll do it something like this. Okay, so we're gonna take these guys, this liver, in a minute. But first I'm gonna take some herbs, and you know, a lot of times I kind of throw in these things whole, but I'm going to actually take them off, because this this recipe is, you know, one of the things with the toasting of the bread, one of the reasons you toast the bread is because it gets finer, because it kind of falls apart better. So I'm just going to pull the thyme leaves off the stems, and throw those in. And I'm using probably, I don't know, it's about 10 sprigs of thyme. I'm going to save the rest of those, and we're going to put them in our stock bag for the thing. And right, and what the other stuff that was in that little bag that goes in the cavity, like the neck and the heart and stuff, that'll go in the stock bag too, with the chicken carcass from tonight. You know, save everything. You know, you can add other herbs if you want to. I'm probably not going to, other than parsley. We're going to add some parsley here at the end. I'm still pulling thyme leaves off. So that's kind of going. We want this to reduce pretty well, the mushrooms. Let me see, look, there we go. See, it's doing its thing. That's a lot of butter, right? But we have to rehydrate the bread. So, the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to chop up this chicken liver. I'm not throwing it in whole. I'm going to chop it up, and I'm doing it on a plastic board, just because I can put that in the dishwasher, you know. I did check this thing for a gallbladder earlier. You should always check. The gallbladder looks a lot like the liver, but it's a little darker and smaller. And the gallbladder is full of bile. Okay, take it off. If you see it, take it off as careful as you can without bursting it. And you know, I eat a lot of chicken livers because they're so healthy. But you really want to get that gallbladder off. Okay, so this is sort of like in a little bit of a paste. And see that? I'm gonna put that in with the mushrooms and the onion. And I'm gonna get rid of this board. Rinse off my knife and my fingers. Wash my hands a little bit. Okay. Now, that looks really good. And we're just waiting for that to kind of reduce a little bit. Now, the other thing that this recipe calls for that I'm not a huge fan of is celery seeds, which have been crushed. And I didn't feel like doing that. And I think the celery seeds are a little bit too, they're a little stronger. So I'm going to use the celery salt again. I know we did this yesterday, but I'm going to put like a teaspoon of celery salt in there. Okay. So that's going. Yeah, some other herbs that would be nicer, maybe it's like some marjoram or some tarragon. You know, I might add that in a minute when we're kind of through some of this. Now, I also have no, we're not going to do that yet. So that's doing its thing. Okay, we're going to let that kind of cook for a little bit and cook down, okay, until the livers are kind of done. I'm going to turn that down on low. Now, how are we going to get these bread heels chopped up? Well, I have a muddler, okay? And if it were really toasted, that would work probably better. But basically, I'm just gonna sit here and crumble it, okay? Now you can also, one of the things that they suggest in this recipe is to roll it with a rolling pin. But these bread heels, some of them are thicker than others, and they didn't really get super dried out. I mean, if you do them in the oven, they might get more dried out. But I'm just basically sitting here like, you know, crushing them. And watching our little thing. So my chicken, I had started at kind of a high temperature, you know, like to get it nice and brown on the outside. And then I've dropped it down to 350. So that's the temperature that we're going to put our stuffing in. Excuse me, no, Winston. He's trying to get the bread. He's trying to get the onions, the bread, the liver. I know, it looks so good, doesn't it? But so why do they toast the bread? Well, part of it's because it dries it out, right? And then you rehydrate it with other things and with more aromatic things. And part of it is that, you know, just like the same reason that toast tastes different than bread, right? You're caramelizing the sugar on the outside of the bread. Okay. I kind of wish I'd done this part before we got on camera. It's kind of taking longer than I thought. Anyway, so what we're going to do, and the reason actually I have this kind of giant bowl that the bread is in, and part of that is because you need a bigger bowl to mix it in than you do to cook it in, just like with a lot of things, right? You want it to be, you know, kind of like firmly packed in that ramekin. Let's see, we have one more thing. So I'm going to show you, I'm just kind of getting through it a little bit. And what bread did I use? Well, I used, you know, whatever I had extra heels of. Okay. I just kind of saved the heels. Some of this is wheat bread, some of it's white bread, some of it's sourdough, some of it's potato bread. It doesn't really matter because the bread is just the vehicle for the fat, right? I mean, it's just like a lot of other things. And, you know, in a perfect world, I would probably sit here and fuss with this bread and get it smaller. But I'm not going to do that. So yeah, what you want is little tiny pieces. Okay, that's looking good. I'm going to turn this off so we retain some of the liquid there. And I'm just going to go and make sure we have all these things. Now, I also have kind of a little handful of parsley that I'm going to chop up. And again, kind of as I think about it, I probably should have just used my food processor and gotten all of this done. The nuts, the bread, the parsley. You know, anytime you want something to have a really consistent smallness, you know, a food processor is pretty great. And I just keep forgetting I had it because I just got a big one recently. You know, I've had that small one forever. So basically, okay, I'm going to throw this in with the mushrooms, just not for any particular reason. I don't want to cook it. The heat's off, but I kind of want to mess with that, with the bread a little bit more. And I also have a cup of pecans, okay? And I'm going to chop those up. Again, they don't have to be super fine, but they just need to not be whole, okay? Now, this recipe also called for hard-cooked eggs. And then you had to do the whites and the yellows separate. And quite frankly, I mean, I've done it. One time I did it exactly to the letter. And that was fine. It was very rich with the eggs and the pecans and the livers and all the stuff. But I really kind of, you know, I don't need to do it that way. I'm going to throw this in with the bread. I'm going to do the other half a cup of these. And I'm trying to think, what else do we need to do? I have some chicken stock over on the other side. Let me chop these up really quickly. I mean, we're at like 14 and a half minutes. So I'm just going to show you what to do so we don't run out of time. I'm going to take all of this and I'm going to put it in the bowl with the bread, okay? And then the last thing that's kind of important is we want a 1/4 teaspoon of mace. Remember, mace is the outside of the nutmeg. Okay, I'm going to throw that in. And then I'm just going to pack that into the ramekin and put it in the oven, 350, for about 40 minutes, okay?